Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is remove this drain plug in the bottom of the radiator here. Just showing you there what that looks like. Then this is just removing that plug. You're just going to turn it counterclockwise like you would any unscrewing anything. And then you're going to drain out all that coolant that's in that radiator. So this is just going into the pan. So now when you take off this radiator cap here, that's going to let air in, and that should yeah, start draining a little bit quicker there. There it goes. Alright, and while that's draining, you can go ahead and take off the reservoir here. If the hose is a little tricky to pull off, just give it a little twist. And then the container here, it just slides right out if you give it a tug. There it goes. And just go put that somewhere where it's not gonna fall over and make a mess. No, not there. Yeah, yeah. Alright, so the next thing you're going to want to do is remove these hose clamps. These are the factory hose clamps. If you have these, you just squeeze the little tabs together and it's going to expand the clamp, and then just slide that up the hose. And you may have the screw-on type hose clamp. We'll see those later in the video. And the same thing, just if it's a little stuck, just give it a little twist and pull, and eventually it'll slide off of there. Same thing on the other side where it goes to the engine. Just take that clamp off and then pull that off of there. And there we go. This is the plug for the radiator fan. That just unclips and pops right out of there. Now this is the lower radiator hose, actually connects to the back of the engine, kind of up higher than you would think it would be, so it's easier to get to. So I just go ahead and remove this, the clamp from this side, go ahead and leave the radiator hose attached at the bottom of the radiator, so you don't have to get down on the ground and try to wrestle it. You can just go ahead and get it off after you get it out of the car. So and this one was a little tricky to kind of get to and reach and pull off of there, but you just give it a couple tugs and there it comes. And I'm going to go ahead and replace these radiator hoses. And if your hoses look like this, I recommend you do the same. Just go ahead while you're replacing the radiator, do the hoses also. So there's just one 10 millimeter bolt on top here. You just unscrew that and this little bracket comes off, and that's all that was holding it in, really. And then it just, the rest of it just slides out. I did have a little trouble here, the hose getting stuck on the air box there, so you just kind of have to jiggle it and pull, and you know, eventually it's going to come out of there. Oh, and so I'm not making a mess in the parking lot here of my apartment complex, I'm going to go ahead and put the drain plug in the bottom of the radiator there so it doesn't drip, and just go ahead and put that cap on there also. Yeah, there you go. And now I'm gonna focus on trying to, you know, get it out the rest of the way here. And that air box is flexible and the hose is flexible and everything, so you just, there it goes. I think it slipped past right there. Yep, now it's out. Alright, so now we are gonna go ahead and just get that hose off of there. Got the pan under it in case there's anything spilling out of it. When it's removed here, nope, completely dry. Alright, so next step's gonna be to remove that fan off of there. So there's just 4 bolts holding it on, 2 on top, 2 on bottom. The two on the bottom on this one were a little bit rusty, so it was a little tricky to get off, but you just tighten it a little bit. There I am loosening it there. There I am tightening it a little bit and then loosening again. And you just kind of work it back and forth like that. You don't want to break these bolts. You know, you don't want to have to, I'm sure you have to go to the junkyard to try to find these, you know, particular bolts, or, you know, get them. It's just, and you don't want the fan in there with just 3 bolts on it. So just be careful getting them out of there. I also like to, this is sped up here to, you know, 8 times speed. But what I'm doing here is just cleaning that fan. You know, this may be the only opportunity to clean it, you know, that you have until you replace the radiator again. So, you know, that's one of the nice things about doing stuff yourself. You can take the time to clean it and do a good job. If you took it to a shop and had them do this, they're not gonna spend the time cleaning that. Okay, so now it's time to put that fan on the new radiator, looking all shiny and new. So you won't want to put a dirty fan on that nice shiny new radiator. So putting the nicer bolts on top, putting the rusty bolts back on the bottom where you can't see them, and just making sure they're all tight here. Now there's also 2 little rubber feet on the bottom of this radiator that came out of the car. So the new radiator did not come with anything, so I went to go put them on the new radiator, but they're actually, as you'll see here in a second, they are just too loose. They're not going to stay on there at all. They made the pegs a little bit smaller. Yeah, so see, they just fell off, and then I lost it behind that box, and then I gave up. And then this is, okay, so we're putting the radiator, now I had a problem here because the this aftermarket radiator, the what do you call them, where you're putting the hose on there, they were a larger diameter than the factory radiator, so the hose clamp did not fit. The hose barely fit on there, so I had to spend a lot of time wrestling that hose on there, because I think these radiators are actually made for the B series engines, not for the D series. So the D series has a slightly smaller diameter hose. Okay, now this is where I fucked up, because I had to put this hose clamp on here because the factory one wouldn't fit. So I was trying to cut this off. That other tool I had wasn't working, so I used the Dremel tool and slipped and nicked the radiator hose. So don't do that. So then the next thing, so those rubber feet, like I said, wouldn't fit on there, so I put them down in the bottom of the frame of the car. There's 2 little spots where they will fit in there. So it just took a second to get that all lined up and in there how it was supposed to be. So like I said, it took a minute to get it lined up doing it that way, but you have to, because they're not going to stay on there. Now there was also another issue here, again, because this isn't really the correct radiator. This peg on top was a little loose inside the grommet of that. Yeah, so you see there it was wiggling around. So what I did was I just put some electrical tape around that peg there to keep it from moving as much. I know that's going to get hot, but hopefully that'll keep it from, and plus once all the hoses and everything are on there, it makes it a little more rigid. So you can see now I'll get that bracket tightened up, and the radiator really won't be moving a whole lot here. Yeah, see, little jiggle test. So this is, yeah, just plugging that fan back in. Make sure you don't forget that. Easy step to forget. And then we're going to put these hoses back on. Now, I had the same problem here on top, of course. It just took me a little bit longer to get this hose on here than it should. If you just get the regular plastic replacement, the black plastic with aluminum core radiator that's supposed to be in here, you won't have this problem. But if you get one of these aftermarket cheap aluminum ones, this radiator was only $50, so it works, but it's it's a little, it's not perfect. Alright, so you got the hose clamp on the one side. I gotta go get a different clamp for the top side where it goes into the radiator. There I'm putting the bottom hose on the back of the engine. Didn't get that shot, but that's what I was doing there. There it is. Bottom hose is on, top hose is on except for the clamp. Everything's plugged in. Yeah, so now all we got to do is put this reservoir on, and we can do that. And I went ahead and cleaned that up too while it was out. Might as well. Which, that's not a hard thing to clean anytime. You saw it just slides right in and out of there. Here's where you'd want to use a funnel if you had any sense, but I didn't have a funnel, so I just kind of winged it here. And I'm gonna get some fluid in here and then just go ahead and check for leaks. I started thinking about it. I was like, man, I didn't make sure that plug was tight in the radiator, so I went ahead and made sure that was tightened by hand, but it wasn't leaking, no drips, nothing. So just go ahead and fill it up the rest of the way here. Now you will have some air bubbles in your radiator hoses and everything. Once the car gets warmed up, you can kind of squeeze those hoses and squeeze the air bubbles out of it, and run the heat, and just kind of get everything circulated, and eventually you'll run all the air out of it. And just filling up that reservoir with what came out of the radiator before, because it was leaking, so that radiator fluid was or that coolant was pretty much fresh that was in that radiator. Alright, so just getting everything cleaned up here, and then I'm gonna have to run to the store and get that last hose clamp that I didn't have. So it might be a good idea if you're planning on doing this to have some extra hose clamps ahead of time. So I almost bought some, but I didn't, and it costs you time. So here I am, back from the store, got the hose clamp. Gonna go ahead and put that on there. I think it was a clamp between like 3/4 and 1 3/4 was how, and it was like perfect. You don't need anything bigger than 1 3/4 for a hose clamp. Alright, so here it is, started up, it's running. Got everything clamped on there, just making sure it's not leaking, everything looks good. And that is how you install a radiator in your 1999 Honda Civic LX. Hopefully that was helpful to you guys, and thank you for watching.